On today's Locked On Jayhawks, we preview Kansas taking on TCU and why this game could essentially wrap up the Jayhawks getting a share of the conference in one way or another. Not quite a clinch, but we'll talk about why.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can hear me as well. Rock Chalk Sports Talk, 3 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday on KLWN, your flagship station in Lawrence. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get any of your podcasts. And on today's edition of the show, we're going to be breaking down the KU-TCU game preview for the game in Fort Worth. Now, we'll start with the storylines. Then we'll move on to the scouting report, what happened in the first matchup when TCU housed Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse, and then we'll finish up with our matchups of the game. We'll start here with the storylines. KU trying to keep pace at the top of the league. They're tied with Texas coming in. And, you know, I think you could make a real argument that, again, it's not quite the clinching word, which you still have stuff in front of you, which, by the way, Texas plays Iowa State at home this week. So that'll be a tough one for them, but pick them to win. Iowa State's been better at home than on the road. You can say that if Kansas wins this game, this is essentially worth clinching in the Big 12. Now, again, you don't know what Texas is going to do, and it's not quite the actual clinch, so it doesn't matter that way. But if you view it this way, Kansas has 2 more home games left. They host West Virginia. They host Texas Tech. Both games they're going to be expected to win. Both games they're going to be favored somewhere in the 6 to 10 point range. So you look at those, and they're sitting at 10 wins right now. We've kind of said that maybe 12 wins gets a share of it, but 13 for sure you would get at least a share of it. That might be enough to win it outright. So that means you have to win 3 of your next 4 to get to the 13 number. If you beat TCU, you should win those next 2 home games. Again, it's not a guarantee, but you should. If you beat TCU, even if you lost to Texas in that final game, you would assume Texas is going to lose one of these other games, and that would be enough to share the conference. So you win tonight in TCU, you feel very confident that you're going to get at least a share of the Big 12 title, if not the whole enchilada. Now, if you lose tonight, you can still win the Big 12. Everything's in front of you, but you just make it, I don't know, make the game in Austin possibly a must-win in that situation to win the Big 12, which I don't know that you totally want to do. Senior day in Austin, the regular season finale against a good Texas team, probably not ideal. So I would just say take care of it now as opposed to taking care of it in their final game of the season. The other top storyline here, TCU back healthy. Mike Miles came back last game, and they put up 100 on an Oklahoma State team that has one of the best defenses in the country, though Oklahoma State certainly just hasn't looked like that with the Kansas TCU games, but I think that's probably more about the opponent and what they did in those specific games. But TCU's back healthy. Lampkin got hurt in the game against Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse. He's back to it. I mean, TCU getting back healthy is a big deal because you look at the record and, you know, it's tied like 5th or 6th in the Big 12. Like technically, I think they're the 7 seed right now if the Big 12 tournament were to start today. But they're much better than that because they've had to deal with injuries. And then the other part of it is TCU's A+ game, in my opinion, is as good as anybody in the country. Now, they don't always play their A+ game, right? I mean, that's part of this too. These are 18 to 22-year-olds. Which team can be the most consistent sometimes ends up being the best, right? It's not always about how good your A+ game is. It's about how good is your B game because the majority of your games are going to be your B game, right? And so I think Kansas's B game is better than TCU's B game, but I think TCU's A+ game might be the best in the conference, if not the country. And we saw that in Allen Fieldhouse. Now, Kansas did not play an A game in Allen Fieldhouse. That was, I don't know, a C or a D game, but TCU did play an A game in Allen Fieldhouse. And you saw the result of that. TCU won 83-60, and it was never really a game after the first 5 minutes of the contest. And now that they're back healthy, they're dangerous again. That scares you. The next top storyline here, KU looking for revenge. As I mentioned, you lose by 23 points at home to TCU. I talked about this before the Baylor game. I'll bring it up again now. Bill Self has only been swept in the regular season twice in his tenure at Kansas. Once was by Oklahoma State in the 17-18 season. Once was by Texas in the 20-21 season. KU's looking for revenge. They're looking to end that, looking to get revenge in Fort Worth, I guess. Last year was kind of an ugly loss in Fort Worth. And last season, you lost kind of similar to how you lost in Allen Fieldhouse, but you lost in Fort Worth that way. Then you came back home and had to grind out a close win, but you ended up doing it in Allen Fieldhouse. Maybe it'll be reversed this year and you're able to get it done in Fort Worth. Certainly, it would mean a lot if you're able to do so. The last top storyline I have here is KU trying to increase their chance of a 1 seed or a better 1 seed. The selection committee coming into the day had Kansas as the 4th and final 1 seed, which means that, there's teams nipping at the bud on you to just have that 1 seed in general because you're the last 1 seed. So trying to secure that. Now, that was before the Baylor win, which that's, one of your more impressive wins of the season. It adds another quad 1 win and everything. So you would think you feel secure as being one of the 1 seeds right now. But you're not just trying to get a 1 seed. You're trying to get as high of a 1 seed as possible. And if you do that, you have a better chance of getting the Midwest. And it's going to be tough because Houston does not play a tough schedule. And when you look at Houston, they're not going to be playing much tougher teams down the stretch. Like, I think Memphis is like a top 40 Ken Palm team. UCF's pretty good, but like none of these teams are, top 15 type teams that they're going to have to play that you really feel like they're probably going to win out, I guess basically is what I'm saying. And so if they're going to win out, for you to jump them for the Midwest in the 1 seed means that maybe you don't have to win out because your schedule is way tougher, but you probably can only afford one more loss if you do want to have a chance of jumping them. And maybe the quad wins at that point would overcome them. So that means chance for another quad 1 win, chance for another resume booster, chance to maybe skip over Houston at some point, win a game like this. And that would certainly help. And as we talked about on last show, does it really matter if KU's a 1 seed in the Midwest versus the East? Like, maybe not. But I think from a fan perspective, I think from a me perspective where I'd like to go cover the game, a lot easier to make travel out to Kansas City than it would be out to, I don't know, where the East and, I don't know, Philadelphia, New York, wherever it is, right? So I would just prefer that personally. But yeah, does it matter for KU? We've seen sometimes they have to go to further distances and they get to play the backs against the wall card and they get that kind of road trip and team bonding mentality over the tournament. I don't really think it matters. KU can accomplish either way. But I think from a viewership perspective, it'd be fun if they're in Kansas City. Okay, we're going to get on to our what happened in the first matchup, scouting report of TCU. Then we'll get on to our matchups of the game. First, this episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and the calories? Then you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. We just got through Super Bowl season. Probably weren't eating great, eating a bunch of great appetizers. Now maybe you want to, scale it back a little bit. Well, try Built because healthy is actually tasty. They're delicious, and what makes them so good for you, they have unbelievable macros with just 130 calories. They have 4 grams of sugar and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And on top of that, they have 100% real chocolate. So even despite having all that great health, it's 100% real chocolate. They have unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. And you can still order them at built.com if you're interested in this. But you can also try it at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. So just head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a 4-bar box. They have cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs. You can run to your Sam's Club. They have 13-bar boxes. You can get brownie batter, churro, or again, you can still order at built.com. You can thank me later. So Kansas TCU, what happened in the first meeting? Well, TCU won 83-60. It was a non-contest, kind of similar to the Baylor game a little bit in terms of TCU got up to this big lead at the half. Kansas did close a little bit. That was actually a 10-point game at half, which that seems way too close from what I remember. But the difference with that and the Baylor game and some of the other KU comebacks, TCU just poured it on them in the second half too. They outscored them 35-22 in the second half to end up winning by 23 points. TCU ended up shooting 54% from the floor that game. They were 8 of 15 from 3. This has not been a great 3-point shooting team. They don't take a ton, but this kind of adds to, they do like everything else really well. So when they are shooting threes, they're very, very tough to beat. You don't expect that to continue, but I don't know. We've seen it so many times where opponents shoot super well against Kansas. So I don't know that you would expect them to have a bad 3-point shooting game. They also shot well at the free throw line, 13 of 16, 81%. Meanwhile, Kansas only shot 39%. They were 7 of 21 from 3. They only got to the line 11 times, made 7 of them, so not a great rate. It ended up, KU had one more offensive rebound, which you would gladly take in this game because TCU is a good offensive rebounding team. Though I wonder how much of that was just as the game went on, Lampkin gets injured and, TCU's up 20. Like they're not going to send as many numbers to the glass with as much physicality maybe. KU also had way too many turnovers. They had 17 of them, and TCU really capitalized. As much as KU is a great transition team, TCU might be the best transition team in the country offensively. Now both these teams are elite offensively, so it's which team can get in transition more, which team can prevent the other team from getting in transition more. That could certainly have a big factor on who wins the game. As far as who stood out in that first game, KU did a good job on Emmanuel Miller. He only had 5 points. Eddie Lampkin had the 8 points, 4 rebounds, but he was limited with the ankle injury. He only played 16 minutes. They got really, really good bench contributions. Cork, Coles, Wells, and Walker combined for 39 points off the bench. Wells had 17, and Xavier Cork, who filled in for Lampkin, was really good with his 9 points. And that was a big difference too, the bench scoring. And at that point in the season, KU's bench still had not really found an identity. I don't know that I'd go as far to say as this KU bench has found an identity yet, but you've at least found some pieces there. Ernest Uday has picked up his game. You saw a little bit from Bobby Pettiford at different points of the season. Joe Yesufu too since then. So the bench has picked it up from where it was last time you played TCU. But certainly it's going to be tough against a TCU bench that is one of the better ones in the conference. Mike Miles was really good. He had 15 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, good efficiency. Damion Baugh was really good with 11 points, but it was just kind of an overall balanced effort for them. Meanwhile, for Kansas, KJ Adams really struggled. He was just 1 of 6 from the floor. Grady Dick was just 3 of 13. Dajuan Harris had 0 points on 0 of 4. And the bench for Kansas, again, didn't really give you anything. The one kind of saving grace for KU in that game was Jalen Wilson. He went 11 of 21, 4 of 9 from 3. He had 30 points, 7 rebounds, but you still lost by 23 because nobody else could do anything for Kansas. So headed into this one, you look at TCU, they're 18-9 on the season, top 20 team on KenPom. They're 7-7 in the Big 12, but don't be fooled by the record. They had lost 4 straight games before beating Oklahoma State 100-75 on Saturday. A lot of those were without Mike Miles and when they weren't really healthy. And you look at 6-point loss at Oklahoma State or a 4-point loss at home to Baylor. Like, those aren't necessarily bad losses. So this is still a very good team. And now that they are healthy, they're even better than maybe some of the numbers show. They're probably closer to being a top 15 team than they are just a top 20. You look at their numbers in conference only play in the Big 12. They're 4th on offense. They are 2nd on defense. They play at one of the fastest tempos in the Big 12. They're number 2 there, but they're number 1 in average possession length offensively. So your transition defense is going to be very important here for KU. Offensively, they are number 1 in effective field goal percentage in the conference. That's because they're number 1 in 2-point percentage. All their great athletes do a great job of cutting to the rim. Lampkin gets them easy shots. Mike Miles is great at driving to the rim, but they are also last in 3-point percentage. So again, you don't expect them to shoot as well. But also to that notion, like as much as you don't expect TCU to shoot 8 of 15 from 3 as they did in Allen Fieldhouse, KU left them wide open for 3 a lot. So they're obviously going to shoot at a higher percentage. But that's the key. Can you prevent them from 2 without giving up wide open threes? Then you should be okay from the outside. As much as they've been a good offensive rebounding team overall, that number has dropped off a little bit. They haven't sent as many numbers forward in conference play. They're down to 7th. Last year, they were I think number 1 or number 2 in the entire country. And through the first half of Big 12 play, they were in the top 30 in the country. Now they're down to 60th, but just 7th in Big 12 only games. They don't turn the ball over a ton. They don't shoot free throws well. That's kind of the MO on the offensive end, though. They get out in transition, they get easy buckets, and they find a way to shoot a lot of good twos. Really good defensive team, though, too. They're really physical. They're athletic. They're fast. They force a lot of turnovers. They are number 1 in Big 12 only games in steal rate defensively. They're number 2 in turnover rate defensively. They do a good job avoiding fouls on that end of the floor, and they've done a good job of limiting 3-point shots against them, though I don't know how much that is skill versus luck. The things they haven't done as well, though, they haven't defended the 2-point shot as well. They're 8th in the conference there. And Kansas has low-key been one of the best 2-point offenses in Big 12 only play, which through the first 4 or 5 games of Big 12 play, you would not have said that about this team, but they kind of figured it out from there. TCU also not a great defensive rebounding team. They're 8th in the conference in defensive rebounding. So Kansas ended up being +1 in the offensive rebound battle last time you played them. Do that again, but limit your turnovers. Instead of having 17, which at the time was your most on the season, get it down to 11, 12, 13. You just had 4 against Baylor, so you should feel pretty good about where you're at there as long as Dajuan Harris is engaged and ready to go. As far as the lineup they're going to throw out, we had seen a lot of Shahada Wells in place of Mike Miles, and Wells was the guy who had 17 against Kansas. I'd imagine he'll still play a big role in this game, but it'll be more Mike Miles and Damion Baugh in the backcourt with Wells kind of coming in. Miles is certainly the guy to watch as being like a high-level scorer. Baugh is the guy that does a little bit of everything. He'll crash the glass. He'll play good defense. He'll be a really good facilitator. He'll score when you need him. He'll hit a jump shot when you need him. He's a really good player for them. On the wing, they have Micah Peavy and Chuck O'Bannon, kind of two, athletic wings. Emmanuel Miller is kind of their three-man who plays the 4 position. He can shoot it from the outside. Didn't have a big game in Allen Fieldhouse, but he's a really good player that can score from different levels. And then down low, Xavier Cork and Eddie Lampkin. Those are 2 big boys at the center position, especially with Lampkin, 6'11", 263. He's a load inside. I think that the big deal for KJ is going to be, because we saw him go 1 for 6 last time they played. When he's attacking through the middle, we see him so often be able to take that blow and, go into the center's chest and finish with that contested layup or that strong layup over him. It's a lot harder when you're going into the body of Eddie Lampkin to take that blow and still maintain your balance and hit the layup. So we'll see how much that affects it in this one, or if KJ just had a bad game last time and he's able to figure it out this go around. But certainly those 2 guards with Miles and Baugh are the ones to watch for TCU and the ones that KU needs to do a good job of preventing from having those like takeoff games. Lampkin has also been and still kind of battling back from injury. He's been a player who, like, one night he could have 20 points and 10 rebounds, another night he might have 6 and 3. So I don't know how much of that's dependent on the defense or if he's just kind of inconsistent that way, but that'll be something to watch in this one as well. We're going to get on to our matchups of the game, but first, this episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. It's super easy to see what jobs are hiring on the LinkedIn app, which I'll go on and see what my friends are up to or see what's posted here or there. So that means you're going to get more applicants if people can see it easier. And it's, a nice interface and everything. They help you quickly attract qualified candidates to the open jobs targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. They make it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all in one platform. You have so many goals in front of you for 2023. Still early in the year, so get the right help that you need to accomplish all those goals with LinkedIn Jobs. Small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Finishing things up on this Locked On Jayhawks with your matchups of the game. We'll have Tuesday's episode will come out, and we'll be recapping whatever happens in the KU-TCU game. We'll probably also have something later this week examining the race to the finish line for the Big 12, where everybody sits, schedules remaining for everybody, what's most likely to happen, and then another game preview later this week for the KU West Virginia game in Allen Fieldhouse. But first matchup of the game, energy/KU versus athleticism. At times this season, Kansas has had trouble matching athleticism. Like, you think of the Tennessee game, that's not just athleticism in terms of speed. I'm almost more talking like physical athleticism, like a physically strong team with athleticism. Tennessee, that's a team that beat Kansas by 14 points, certainly double digits. That's kind of how you describe Tennessee. Like, they're a very physically athletic team. That's how you describe TCU, physically athletic team. They're also a very fast team too. You look at some of the games that KU has played against that athleticism, and maybe they've had some struggles there. Maybe that's just the other teams they've played have been good and you've had a bad game, or maybe there is a correlation there. But that certainly was kind of a correlation with last year's team and the year before that's team too. So that certainly might be a thing, and that will be interesting how KU handles that in this game. I think the more you play a team like that, the better it helps you, because the less shock and awe you kind of get after the first matchup. But where is KU's energy going to be? The energy, and specifically the energy as it pertains to the defensive side of the ball, was not good, to say the least, in the game in Allen Fieldhouse against TCU. Can that level get up for this game in Fort Worth? Because if that level is up and you're able to play hard defense and stay up with the energy the entire game, because they're going to run really fast and they're going to get in transition a lot, you have to have a lot of hustle and energy on the defensive side of the ball. If you do that well, and can limit their transition a little bit more, then you should be okay. But if you don't match their energy and they get a bunch of offensive rebounds and transition buckets, that's where the problem arises. The next matchup, KU on the defensive glass versus the TCU offensive rebounding. You did a good job in the first matchup. You did a good job against Baylor last game. TCU, again, has not been great at it in Big 12 play, but it's still in there with some of the player personnel that any specific game, they could go off for a bunch of offensive rebounds, especially now that they're getting healthier again. Just don't let this be a takeover. Like we saw that the game that was played in Fort Worth last year, I think TCU had 20 offensive rebounds. Don't allow that to happen. Keep them around where they were last time, 9 or 10, and you should be okay there. The best player matchup is probably Mike Miles versus Dajuan Harris. KU's switching 5, so I say this all the time with the player matchups. Don't know how much you'll see one on the other, blah, blah, blah. But Dajuan Harris should be able to help take Mike Miles out of the game, or maybe he's on Damion Baugh. Either way, that would be the matchup of the game. But how aggressive can Dajuan Harris be on one end of the floor? Mike Miles is not known for being a great defender necessarily. So if he's on Dajuan Harris, take advantage of that matchup if you're Dajuan Harris and have another big aggressive game. Doesn't have to be 14 points on 6 of 8 like Baylor, but you probably need double digits. Probably need at least 8 points in this game from Dajuan Harris. And then the KU bigs versus, Lampkin and Cork. How do you do defensively, preventing the post? Can you do a good job of maybe not having to double so you don't leave open guys from 3? We've seen KU maybe not want to double the last couple games to prevent that. And then on top of that, like I said, with KJ Adams, can he take it into the body of Lampkin and not be bumped off enough because of the size and strength of Lampkin that he can still hit those kind of runner shots or those contested layups that he's so good at been powering to the rim. And on top of that, this is a game where if KJ can hit 1 or 2 of those mid-range shots or maybe be a passer out of the short roll, you can take advantage of that because you have the speed and mobility on their center. So utilize your speed and mobility. Then on the other side, when we get Ernest Uday in, this is a big boy matchup for him. But I think Ernest can compete with the physicality. We've seen him play really well here. So those are kind of the matchups that I'm most interested in. But also, we'll see. Does Jalen Wilson continue where he left off? He had 30 points last game against TCU. Does Grady Dick pick it up after going 3 of 13 against TCU? Kevin McCullough, what's his ankle situation going to be like? He seemed to be okay against Baylor, but sounded like he was playing through a lot of pain. So those are all going to be of key importance against TCU. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or you can find us on YouTube. Just a thumbs up if you can, and we'll see you on tomorrow's edition to recap whatever happens between Kansas and TCU. This has been Locked On Jayhawks. You can catch me later today on Rock Chalk Sports Talk. Later.